All right, welcome everybody to our latest Live Motocross podcast as we preview the 2025 Motocross of Nations with the great man Jason Thomas. Firstly, thank you to everyone for listening and supporting the website. We really appreciate it. We'd also like to thank our sponsors for this episode in Fly Racing and Firepower. Starting with Fly Racing, who have just recently dropped their 2026 range, which raises the bar once again for performance and design. Built with championship-proven technology, the new collection is all about control, comfort, and confidence on any track in any conditions. Leading the charge with the Formula S, the world's first off-road smart helmet. It's a game changer and a bold statement of Fly Racing's commitment to innovation. Ready to ride? Check out the full 2026 line at flyracing.com, your local dealers, and follow flyracing.global on social media and cheer for all their athletes, which there'll be plenty of this weekend at the Motocross of Nations. Also, big shout out to Firepower, who are teamed up with Club MX and many other heavy hitters in the industry. So be sure to check them out online and on socials to see why they're so highly regarded. Welcome now, JT. Fresh from landing near Ironman there, mate. You ready for a big weekend of action? And the big news is just broken. Hayden Deegan is not going to be racing for Team USA. So bit of a bummer, but also not the worst thing that could happen because Justin Cooper is an elite, reserve to have to fill in, isn't he?
Yeah, it's man, it's been a wild week, and I think this always had to be in the realm of possibilities, and that's why they had Justin Cooper as a reserve rider. I know he had been preparing. I don't know if he had been preparing as if he was still racing, but something close, right? Like he's around that team full time. He would know better than we would kind of how Hayden was progressing, just because they're all that group is pretty tight knit as far as like information, and they're all around each other. So I think he probably knew in the back of his mind, like, hey, I need to stay on my game here. And he had already been practicing on the 250. So I'm sure he stayed relatively on his program. And I mean, if you're going to have a rider of the caliber of Hayden Deegan exit, I don't know how many backups you're going to get better than Justin Cooper, and how good he has been in the past on the 250, how good of equipment he is going to have for a fill-in rider, and just how well he rode in Pro Motocross this year. So, is it a drop off from Hayden's best? Yeah, probably. Like, I think Hayden has an argument to make about being the best 250 rider globally, but he's not 100%. So, I think the question is, if Hayden's not right and he would be forcing himself to ride through injury. We don't know what that level would be like. Also, you have to think about any sort of issue, any first turn crash, any toughness through the weekend, and also 3 days of riding, Friday practice, Saturday qualifying, Sunday race. That's a lot of laps on an injury. So it was always going to be an uphill climb, whether he could or couldn't. It was going to be really difficult. So somewhere in there, this isn't the worst situation to have a healthy, ready to go Justin Cooper, who is one of the best starters we've seen ever on a 250, be ready to take the reins here.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world, is it, mate? And obviously, yeah, Justin Cooper, he's done it before, mate. He's healthy, obviously, is the main thing. But yeah, he's a former champion, delivered on the big stage when he's needed to. And I guess how's the Team USA camp feeling heading in, mate? Confident with the team there, Tomac and RJ. Obviously, a lot of the heavy hitters behind the scenes there, mate. I guess confidence is sort of pretty strong, I'd imagine, because it's a home race. It's super exciting for everyone involved, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the riders are probably kind of shoulder shrug. And again, I think somewhere in there, they're probably like, okay, well, win, lose, or draw, an injury going into the event isn't going to keep us out of it. And I think there was a worry there. I think for both RJ and Eli, they were like, so what if he can't go? Like, what if he's in the qualifying race Saturday and he has a tip over and that's it? We're done. Done officially on Saturday. And we know he's hurt. It's not like, it's going to be any surprise. And that doesn't mean that they can't get hurt or Justin Cooper can't get hurt. But going into a race with, 12 days out of surgery, I just don't think is the right setup. And, Hayden Deegan is the perfect choice for this team if he's healthy. But the fact of the matter is he's not healthy. So I think they look at it the same way that I do. I think they'll probably say, okay, well, we have a great fill-in guy, and our chances with an injured Hayden Deegan or a fully healthy, ready to go Justin Cooper are at worst about even. So I think they're fine with this. Like that's why I say shoulder shrug. I think they're like, okay, let's go. We were ready to go before. This isn't even worse, and maybe it's going to be better.
Yeah, it'll be great to see how it all pans out. And I guess you'll be flat out as well this weekend, mate, on the broadcast duties. It'll be great to see you in the booth with Paul. And I don't know if you've got any insights on the track and how's the fan attendance. Will be absolutely huge. It'll be packed. It's epic. And the fans will be going wild. And it's a really massive sort of 3 days of activities. And the racing on the track's obviously what we all want to see. But it really is a huge, complete event. And I guess we spoke, I remember last year, I think it was, when you were mentioning the seven deuce deuce, wasn't that stoked on it? And you were sort of pretty heavily in disagreement with that because it really is the showpiece of the motocross calendar worldwide, isn't it, mate? So just give us your take on your feelings on the event and obviously how the broadcast work will be shaping up.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an epic weekend. There's no other way to put it. Anybody who's ever been to this event anywhere on Earth, outside of maybe Mantova a few years ago during the COVID issues, I mean, yeah, that wasn't the best I've ever seen. Of course, 2017 in Assen, was it 19 or 17? Wasn't all that great either. But I don't know. It's the event of the year in my estimation. Like you could make a case for Anaheim 1 being in there too. That's fine. But networking, excitement, atmosphere, unique format, the patriotism, the pageantry of it all. It's the only race we have this kind of parade, and you kind of have strange bedmates for this race because riders who are typically pitted against each other are now teammates, and they're forced to kind of talk and get along. And I don't know. It's such a different. It's just a different event than there is anywhere else on Earth, and I think that's what I love about it. It's always in a different location, and we're traveling the world chasing this thing, and the racing itself, it's really hard to beat because you get unpredictability, you get chaos. That third moto is always anarchy, lead changes, team, like overall lead changes. It always delivers. So the weather's gonna be great this year, and I can't imagine a world where this year doesn't deliver as well.
Oh, it's going to be so epic, mate. And I guess looking back over the years, you've covered many of these events, both, as a fan, when you were riding, as a broadcaster, you've done it all, mate. So what's some of your particular best memories that stand out? Because I'm sure the fans would love to hear them because there's plenty, mate. There's probably too many to go through, but is there a couple of standouts?
Like so many of my years going were watching on the television, right, or watching online, streaming it from whether they were in France or wherever around the world they were. So that was a lot of my exposure to it for a long time. And then kind of once I stopped racing in 2012, I basically made a dedicated decision that I was going to chase these races wherever they may go around the world. I was going to chase them, and I did exactly that. I went, the first year I kind of came to that decision. It was in Germany, and then in 2013, that was 2012. No, 2012 was in Wamel. I did not go because I was still racing. I was racing, getting ready for Montreal that year. But 2013 was the first year I was in Twitchenthal, and I've been every year since then. I think Latvia was wildly underrated. Like that was an incredibly great race, venue, unique place to go race this super cool event. I think France and the USA are the top two venues there are, period. Majora's would come in a close third on top of those. But anywhere you get these really picturesque, iconic venues, you can get some of the EU crowd for Majora or France, and no one turns out like the French Etournay. Like just start there. No one turns out like they do. So that has to be on the front end. But it's just anytime we get one of those three, I would say those are my favorite. Even though we didn't win, I would say Ernay in 2016, I believe. The French won. USA was second. Jeremy Martin was on the team. Cooper Webb, I think, was on that team. But we got second. And the French manhandled the USA. It's fine. Like it was, they deserved to win. They were incredible all day long. But that one was, I think, one of the best I've ever seen. Like I don't know how much better it could have gotten than that particular year. The weather, the track, the performances, a lot of those riders have kind of stepped away, like MXoN, and those guys are not around anymore. That one was just an all-timer.
Oh, it's great stuff, mate. Love hearing all that old stuff. And yeah, it's certainly delivered on so many occasions over the years, the event, and this one should be exactly the same. And heading in, I guess, is Team Australia your favourites? Obviously, reigning champs from last year, which was, you were there the first time they'd ever won it, which was an amazing achievement. Jet and Hunter Lawrence were probably even better positioned to get a better result this year. And obviously Kyle Webster, he's raced a lot of nationals the last couple of years, and he's a back-to-back Aussie 450 champion, former MX2 winner in Australia too. Very experienced, super excellent rider. So I guess Australia, the favourites from your end heading in, mate, they're going to be pretty hard to beat, but it's definitely easier said than done to get the job done.
Yeah, I think they have to be considered the favorite. When you look at their performance last year, when you look at the lineup that they have, when you look at the fact that they have all raced on this track before, they're all healthy. Australia, I think, has arguably the best two 450 riders right now. And it's really hard, like, to measure the MXGP guys versus Jet and Hunter. We're gonna do that this weekend, but there's no way you can't say that they're not in the conversation for the best two guys. That's for damn sure. So when you look at it all kind of combined, I think they have to be. I think the USA was on even footing with them when it was Tomac, Sexton, and Deegan. Maybe Deegan made the difference and gave them the nod over Webster because he could put some points into Webster. But I don't know if Jet goes 1-1 and Hunter goes, 3-1 or 2-2 or something. Like, that's a really hard thing to overcome for Team USA also. So I have them as the prohibitive favorite. But I think there are a lot of teams that could be in the fight. I really do. If there's any sort of issue for Webster, if Hunter is just one tick off, like Hunter wasn't over the top great in 2024 at Matterley. He was good. They got the job done, but he didn't have kind of a Renaissance Hunter Lawrence type day. So if there's something like that again, I could see lots of other teams get in there. The French team's a big question mark with Valan. You never know what you're getting from Renault. I think the Belgians have been wildly underlooked. Yes, they're young. Yes, Everts is getting on, a bigger bike, but both Coonan should be in the fight in their classes for overall wins. And then if Liam Everts has a standout day, guess what? Like, they're in this thing. So I think there are a lot of teams like that. And obviously you can kind of mention whichever ones you want, but I think there are some teams that aren't going to be talked about a lot on Friday that are going to be talked about a lot on Saturday midday. It's like, how the hell didn't we think about them? Well, that's what we're talking about right here. We need to make sure that we cover those bases so we're not all surprised on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely well said. Yeah, Belgium's definitely primed, not just this year, but in the future years. They've got such a young crop of really talented riders there that should be staples, for the next decade plus. So you'd expect a win from them in the not too distant future. And obviously, if they have an issue, you still got guys like Yago who showed, not long ago at the Nations just what a weapon he is. Obviously, things haven't gone to plan too well in the years since, but yeah, him and Brent Van Donnick, really talented riders as well. And it's going to be pretty cool to have Cairoli there for Italy with Bonacorsi and Adamo. So that'll bring a lot of star power and sort of, extra impetus to the event, which is obviously without guys like Vial, Prado, Sexton, Hurlings, and now Deegan. So it's good to have those heavy hitters that sort of, while Italy probably won't be winning it again, like Cairoli is a former champ, it's great to have him there. And it's just great for the spotlight on the event even further, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think, having Cairoli just kind of adds some history to it. I'm happy to see that he was willing to kind of make the move, and look how good he was at Redbud. Like, he was able to run inside the top 10, so he's certainly still capable. I think the German team, I don't know how Max Spies is going to do. That's really the question. But Langenfelder and Roxon, that's a pretty damn solid lineup. I don't know how much more you could ask for the German team from that. They just fall into this category of so many teams that the third rider is going to be the question mark. I would say Slovenia is in that. Panzer has been so damn good this year, and they could, if you told me that they needed one solid moto out of, I believe it's Paklaj is how you say his name. To be in the top five, that would be a hell of a performance from Slovenia. So there are a lot of teams where, and that's always kind of how this race goes. The third guy is so pivotal. And I think the other two, You'll have two world-class race winning level guys on the team that are just looking over at the guy going, please just one moto, the best moto of your life. If we get it, you'll celebrate this weekend for the rest of your life. And that is such a typical concept for Motocross of Nations. And, like we've seen it, like who can do it and who can't. Cooper Webb came through with one decent moto. Kyle Webster came through with one decent moto. That's how these podiums are done oftentimes. It doesn't take 6 motos. It just takes your best 5.
Yeah, well said, mate. Absolutely agree on that. There's so many interesting dynamics and subplots at play with these teams, and then can't wait for the racing to get going. And you look at the Netherlands as well; they're just going to be looking for really consistent results from Koldenhoff and Verlanderen, and obviously Kai de Wolf. They'll be really wanting him for the victory. It would have been quite cool to see him against Deegan because they're both pretty sort of confident, assertive figures, mate. They would have really relished battling each other. So a bit of a shame we don't get to see that. And then obviously Spain. Just if they had Prado, they would do some serious damage, but still Fares Garcia, the young EMX 250 racer, is a star in the making. He's won many races, but big step going on to the 450. So Fernandez, Fares, and Garcia still strong, but could be a chance for a podium there, mate. But the Netherlands, obviously, just the timing of Hurlings' form and the team getting selected didn't quite work out, did it?
Yeah, I mean it's a letdown for both of those teams you named. I think for Spain not having a ready, fit, solid Prado, that hurts because if you have Prado, Fernandez, and Ferris, like that's a hell of a lineup. Like you give me the world championship winning Prado, and I don't think that team really has to fear a whole lot. Especially if Ferris is riding on the level that he's shown us late in the season that he can. Dropping down to Garcia is tough. Like that feels like a big loss for them. So now they're kind of scrambling like, hey, we can be a top 10 team. It just changes the expectation is really all that it does. Doesn't mean they can't perform. I think the expectation now is simply just a little bit different. And the Netherlands, the Netherlands with Hurlings, they're a championship winning team this weekend. Without Hurlings, now you start asking questions. Can they find moto wins? Because I do think winning this event often takes moto wins to get it done. So can Koldenhoff ride out of his mind a la 2018? Can Kai de Wolf get starts? Because that is absolutely going to be a huge deal, whether he can or can't get the starts against the 450s. That Justin Cooper, they're going to give him the good gate, and there's a very good chance he comes out inside the top 10 on a star, just unbelievably fast 250. So that's a lot for Kai to match up to. And then for Verlanderen, it's been a little hit and miss. It doesn't mean Verlanderen can't show up, but we haven't seen his best stuff every single time. So you tell me which Verlanderen shows up, and I can kind of tell you how good their chances are. They're one of those teams where they have all of the pieces in place. There is no question about any of that. It's just, where do they stack up if everybody else is kind of on their game? And I don't know. That's the beauty of this thing is there are so many teams that I think are on equal footing outside of Australia. I do think Australia has an edge, but everybody else, I really feel just throw them in a hat and start pulling names out.
Yeah, it's great stuff. There's so many quality riders as you worked out in the list, and if you follow the GPs pretty closely, even some of those EMX 250 riders are super fast. And you look at Switzerland, they've got Groitman as their young gun on the Cat Moto team over there. He's obviously done some great stuff in EMX 250, and he's having Gio, his awesome season continues, mate. He's on the team, and Jeremy Sewa, class act over the years. You know what he's capable of, and I guess Italy going under the radar a bit this year, but Bonacorsi, he's shown that he's a front runner in MXGP. Just, his progression's been excellent through the classes, through the categories over the years, and he's sort of primed to make an impact here. And Adamo, former MX2 world champion, alongside Cairoli there. So Italy, probably not to be underestimated either, are they, mate? The Swiss and the Italians could do some damage.
Yeah, I think so. The Italian team, they have talent. Like Adamo can stack up with any of the 250 guys. We've seen it all year long. When he's feeling it, he can win. Cairoli, he's obviously long in the tooth. That goes without saying. Doesn't mean that he can't put in a really strong day and be in the top 10 in both motos. I just don't think, his best days are behind him. So expecting him to go out and be podium Todi Cairoli on Sunday is I don't think that's a fair ask at 40 years old. It's just not. It's not a fair ask. And then, Bonacorsi, I think, has really overperformed on the 450. Like obviously his body size, he needs to be on that 450 anyway, but he looks the part. Like he's been battling for podiums in MXGP. Like that is legit for a rider that I don't think most Americans even know who it is. Being completely honest, I don't even think most Americans even know who that. If you said his name, they would have no idea who that is. So when you look at it in that frame, I think it's a pretty nice setup for a low pressure, big time opportunity type situation for Team Italy. And are they going to win? They're not. I just say it on the front end. The weather's going to be good. There's not going to be these outlier situations. They're not going to win, in my opinion. But could they be top five? They put in a really strong day. They could absolutely be top five.
Yeah, there's so many, really good teams just throughout, and those two are going to be up there. And I guess Latvia is another good one to touch on. Obviously, the Razula's brothers have shown that they're class acts. Obviously, Carlos and MX2 the last couple of years in Yamaha, the factory squad there. He's posted some really good results. And then Yanis is the EMX 250 champion at the moment. And then joined by Pauls Jonas, whose career speaks for itself. He's brilliant. Obviously, if they can sort of all progress together and be fit in the future editions, their future's looking pretty bright for them. And like you mentioned, Slovenia with Geyser and Pansar, if they could just get that third rider over the line. And then you look down and you got Denmark, have got Harrop, Sweden have got Gifting, Canada's, always produces some pretty strong riders. So then Team GB, not really the year they're looking for this year. Obviously, with a lot of riders like Watson and Anstey not there, it's going to be a bit tough for them. But even Enzo Lopes racing, there's so much talent as you work your way down, and a lot for the fans to enjoy, isn't there?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of individual performances to keep your eye on. I think Joe Shimoda is going to turn some heads. If you haven't had an opportunity to kind of check out his riding on Instagram, like he is ripping right now. So a lot of teams like that, like I want to see what Conrad Muse can do, kind of on an individual level. I want to see what Shimoda can do. I want to see what a lot of these guys can do. Just kind of, not so much on a team level. It's going to be tough. I would even say Geiser's in there a little bit because if Panzer is not on his game, it's going to be a tough day. He's certainly capable. We've seen him battle for podiums in MXGP. So that tells you he has the potential. But if he's just a little off or he doesn't adapt to the track or anything like that, they're not going to get a ton of help from the third rider. So the team effort may not be exactly where they want it. But I will be watching for those types of days. Like I thought Geiser kind of stole the show, that final moto in Matterley, right? Like team effort, sure, it was okay. He propelled them forward, but holy cow, his individual effort was, I don't know, it was all anybody was talking about, that Geiser beat Jet in that final moto.
Yeah, it's going to be great to see some of those battles just, fighting for their own, supremacy and just wanting to, on the grand stage perform exactly like Geiser did last year. And it's really good to see that the event, obviously, some teams have different structures and different levels of funding, but, you see how much of an effort the USA have really ramped it up in the last few years. Australia's program, they do so much impressive fundraising back in Australia to make it all happen. So the conditions are there to succeed. And you caught up with Paul recently, and he's really elevating things there, making the athletes feel as comfortable as possible. And so they're able to perform at their best. And they're really trying to bring in these team environments, which is no mean feat with a team like France that usually some pretty spiky characters that don't always get on. So it's cool to see those behind the scenes organizations really putting everything into it to give their teams the best chance. It just raises the bar so much, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, this race is all about camaraderie. And I think the French team have really epitomized that. Like if you want to look at a team who really get it all right, they lean into each other, they can put the competitiveness of the season behind, and I just think they do it the right way. If you were looking for one, I think they have changed everybody else's strategy. I know they for sure, I can tell you from the inside, they have forced Team USA to kind of change how they do things, because they look at the French team and they're like, man, we are missing angles everywhere. We're missing advantages. We're missing the edge. They are out strategizing us on every front. It was basically what 2018 taught Team USA. So they put in a lot of countermeasures in place now. Team USA is a lot more organized than it ever has been these days. But all of that started from the French Federation, and I would say even Gauthier Paulin's influence over there of really changing the narrative on that team.
Yeah, it's going to be really good to see. And yeah, that just shows how important the event and how highly it's regarded. And I guess that team harmony is so important. Do you think the USA will be a bit more sort of settled without Deegan there? Obviously, they're all really experienced campaigners, the American crew. So I guess they'll take it in their stride as another race, but the nerves and excitement will need to be managed throughout the weekend, I'm sure, because, just dealing with so many fans, it can be quite draining, as a professional racer. It's a lot to take on. So I need to be managing rest and recovery and nutrition and just making sure they get enough sleep even during the days during the moto. So that's another thing that these riders have to consider, don't they?
Yeah, they do. It's a completely different format than especially the USA guys are used to. So I was really concerned with Hayden having to ride 3 days, and speaking to people who had had this injury before, they were also saying that it was really difficult to put consecutive days of riding together because of the soft tissue soreness. Even if the collarbone's plated, that's not a problem. It's not weight bearing. They can manage the pain, but the soft tissue coming out of surgery that all is going to basically get jarred, and that was going to be a real concern, especially when the weight of the world is riding on the third day. It's not like you can go get the biggest day out of the way on the front end, and then on the last day you don't have all this pressure, and even if you're sore, no big deal. Everything matters on Sunday, so that was going to be a problem. Now the other guys like Tomac, I think these guys are smart enough to understand. RJ has Alden Baker in his corner. Like, these guys are smart enough to understand that, like, hey, this is a track that we know. We don't have to go crazy on Friday. Like, just put some laps in. Everybody stay calm. Save your energy. Don't do anything stupid. Feel the bike out. Feel yourself out. And let's go to the parade. Saturday, kind of the same thing. Get some quick laps in. Do your qualifying. The point I'm trying to make is having so much time between RJ, Tomac, and Cooper. They've raced this track, I don't know, anywhere from 8 to 15 times between the three of them at nationals. So they know this track inside and out. And I've gone down that road. There were national tracks that I rode more than a decade. You show up, you do a few laps, and you're like, oh yeah, I know exactly everything about this track. Like, I'm good to go. So I think they will manage their efforts very much on the front end of that, knowing that it's, what matters is on Sunday. It's also going to help that the high here, Fahrenheit, is like going to be like 79. These guys are used to training in brutal conditions. Like, Florida in the summer, this is going to feel like the nicest day of the year for them. So that's going to help them also. So yeah, it is a concern having 3 days when they're not really used to it, but I think that they will be able to manage that for the reasons I kind of went through.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Great analysis of that, mate. And obviously, with you doing the broadcasting with Paul, what's the event coverage looking like? Obviously, there's a lot of live shows from some of that US media, which you'll probably be involved in. Great to catch up with old friends from your perspective and some of the teams and partners of Fly Racing. So it'll be a busy weekend, mate. I'm sure there's lots of extra stuff in the works, and the fans will be pretty engaged throughout the weekend, getting all the latest and greatest from the event, won't they?
Yeah, they will. I mean, it's I think everything that goes on at this event is just top notch from the competition level to the on site experience. Yeah, there's just I don't know. You're getting the best of everything outside of like Supercross. Infront's bringing their best stuff. MX Sports they're going to go all out because they want to knock this out of the park, right? This is MX Sports' first go round at this event. Redbud has had it twice. Going back to 2010 was David Quaybaugh, right? So this is MX Sports' opportunity to really show how they can kind of get the job done in their own way. So I think they're gonna absolutely go for everything there is to get.
It's going to be great to see you. They did a great job last year and over the years, so I would expect to keep that rolling. And I guess looking ahead, for you personally, mate, Fly Racing, there's a lot of riders that'll be representing the brand. You got Hampshire, you got Muse, Webster, the Coonan brothers, Langenfelder. I guess you and the team have been putting in a lot of work behind the scenes as well, mate. So just give us a little insight into that, and I'm sure you've got some awesome stuff in the works.
Yeah, I mean it's there's a lot of work that's gone in. The RJ thing at the last second was difficult for the team to pull off. I don't have to touch really much of that, but I watch it go on right in front of me. And yeah, it's just a lot of people scrambling to get things executed. So, kudos to them. They had to pull off all these other things for Conrad and the Coonans and Kyle Webster and Simon Langenfelder. and all the other, kind of more privateer type riders that are on other countries that maybe you wouldn't immediately think of. But there's a lot of riders that, like, this is a big effort for them. Like we had the entire Honduran team, for example, right? Like getting all of them equipped, custom gear, stuff, things you would never think about having to take care of them. We do. So it's just a massive lift by the team to pull this off. And yeah, I think we're on the home stretch now. I think we're good to go.
Oh, nice, mate. I hear A-Ray talk on the Swap Moto saying for Justin Cooper, they didn't know what was going on. So I think they were like, putting jerseys together with all three numbers because it was so up in the air. That sort of sums up Team USA, how it's sort of been, not just this year, the last few years with the selections. But as we wrap up, mate, just the fans really love hearing your insight on Prado and that Kawasaki second seat. So have you got anything more from that side of things?
Nothing. There has literally been nothing happen over there. The only thing I would say is that tomorrow is October 1st, and we're recording this the day before. So I would expect to get news on the 1st, whether that's Kawasaki releasing him. If there was going to be news, it's going to be then. The trouble is, I think they're still trying to work out the details of that. Who pays for what? Is it a clean release? Does he have to buy himself out? How does all that stuff work? I don't know that that's been sorted yet. So that is the challenging part of this. Other than that, I think you're going to get a lot of press releases tomorrow. You're going to get Jason Anderson's release. You're going to get Chase Sexton switching from Red Bull KTM to Kawasaki. Basically, every change is going to happen tomorrow. I don't know, though, like, will Tomax happen tomorrow, or will they wait till Monday after Motocross of Nations? Like, there'll be some wonkiness there. But October 1st is the big day for American motocross as far as PRs.
Oh, it'll be interesting. So we'll be definitely watching this space. And have you got any updates on Shimoda, if he's signed a deal? And just furthering on that Kawasaki second seat, you mentioned it, it's sort of holding things up and what to do to promote one of the pro circuit ones. And is there any word on like guys like Barsha and Ferrandis is actually signing on the dotted line for Ducati there? Or do they go down the path of, Christian Craig? I don't think he's sorted for AMA racing at least. Or do you get Tickle back, or do you get Nicoletti on the Kawasaki like he did this year over in Canada, mate? There's probably some wild options going ahead, but have you got anything on Shimoda in that second seat at Cowie?
No, nothing's happened with Shimoda either. I do fully expect him to go to Honda, though. Typically there would be smoke with fire. And most of all, I can't imagine a world where Shimoda wins the first ever championship in America for a Japanese rider, and then Honda doesn't retain him. That just seems impossible to me. Honestly, it seems like it just never could happen. So I'm just going to lean on that as like the most logical outcome is for Honda being like, well, we wanted him anyway, but now it's a no-brainer. We're absolutely keeping him now. And I think that just makes too much sense for him to be there. Especially you think about the president of Honda HRC was at Redbud. Like there's just no way. There's no way. Like as much as I want to kind of play conspiracy theorist and think he could end up elsewhere, I just don't see how it could be possible.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of things at play, and there's still like so much news cranking across the sport. Obviously, I don't know how sort of invested are you in WSX at this point. They're definitely trying to make some waves and get some really big riders like Deegan just got announced to race that Argentina round. And I guess the money's pretty good. You're a fan of those sort of off-season races to boost the bank account, mate. But they're definitely sort of trying to make an impact with, getting Tomac and Cooper Webb, Justin Cooper, Vial, Craig, Anderson, Savachi, McElrath, Roxon will do a couple. Anstey, there's definitely some big names on the table there, mate. So do you think they're gaining a little bit more traction from fans in America and just across the globe, mate? Because they're certainly giving it a tilt.
Well, I think they're, like the WSX thing, they're not scared to spend some money, right? So they will go out and offer a guy 150 grand or 250 grand for like Tomac, 200 grand for Roxon. They're willing to go out and spend the money. I think the government funding that they get for a lot of these events is really the linchpin. Like that allows them to go do these things. There's not enough money in the race itself to do something like that. So when you get, like Australia invested in MXGP, like you get those types of interactions that opens the door to get a guy like Tomac or Roxon or Hayden Deegan, Cooper Webb, right? That's how these things are pulled off. Otherwise, just dollars and cents wise, it doesn't make any sense. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if Deegan goes to Australia. I know last year there's a lot of drama between, kind of the Lawrences and Lucas Myrtle and Deegans about them not wanting him there. I don't know if that's still a thing with Myrtle not in the equation anymore. Is Hayden just trolling them knowing he can't go or is not going and just trying to kind of piss them off? I don't know, right? Like that wouldn't shock me for a second. But it will be fun. It'll be fun to watch Hayden race the 450. Like that'll be interesting. He's gonna go to South America for the first one and try that out. But I'm a big fan of these off-season races. I think they're wildly entertaining. I love that the riders make a ton of money. It's really a win-win for everybody. If the government sees a reason to invest in tourism and shining a light on their sport and their country, and the riders are the beneficiaries, more power to them. Like I just don't see a downside to it.
Yeah, bring it on. There's definitely a thirst for the fans in the industry across the globe to have some more racing to enjoy in the main series aren't on. And just quickly, the SMX calendar dropped today as well, mate. Is there any particular highlights in there you'd like to touch on? I'm assuming you'll be back on the broadcast next year, mate, crushing it. So that's another exciting thing that's just come out today.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of familiar venues, so Houston, we have been to a million times, but we're going back. We haven't been in a few years. So that'll be, I like revisiting places we haven't been recently. I think the highlights are Nashville and Cleveland are probably the big names that people have wanted to go back to Nashville desperately. And there's been a lot of criticism that we haven't. Well, it's not that they don't want to. They completely rebuilt their stadium. So we literally could not go back there. I promise you from the inside, knowing how well it's been attended, Feld desperately wanted to be back there too. So everybody's on the same page about going to Nashville. We just kind of had to wait for the stadium to be built and then the NFL season to get going for us to get back there. So that'll be a lot of fun. Nashville is just wildly entertaining town to visit. And then Cleveland, we haven't been to since 1995. So that'll be really interesting. I have personally never been downtown Cleveland, so that'll be kind of fun for me. New stadium, new venue. And then I think the one that kind of had people talking this week was the Seattle date has been moved to mid-February. Like that is going to be a wild one. For people listening around the world, you probably have no idea why, but the weather in Seattle in February is pretty awful. Cold, wet, snow, rain, pretty bad setup. So we're going to see how it goes. Typically we go there March or April, which is later into the spring. You can kind of get lucky. This past year, it usually run into rain. It's usually not freezing cold. There's a solid chance that we could have snow at Seattle in 2026. So that one was like, oh boy, like that. You just don't know. Maybe we get lucky, maybe we don't. But on the surface and looking at historical forecasts, that one's a tricky one.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out. It'll all roll around pretty quickly, that's for sure, mate. And any final thoughts? Obviously, big weekend ahead for you personally and just for the industry as a whole and the sport, but then a bit of time off for you to have a break and recharge the batteries because it's been another hectic season for you covering the sport across the globe, mate. And then before too long, you'll be back doing the Supercross A1 countdown, doing all the preparation, the meetings and all that. So a little bit of a time to exhale after the nations for you.
Yeah, it'll be good. Don't really have any plans, but that's kind of the point. So go home, kind of settle into normal life again for a couple months, really. And I'll have some travel to do some things for Feld. But yeah, as far as like a weekend and week out travel and going to races and stuff, it definitely slows down. I remember what this feels like because every year it's like this big transition and then you transition back again in January. So, yeah, I gotta find some hobbies. Really, what it comes down to. I gotta find some stuff to do with my time when I'm not at work or not at a racetrack.
Oh, mate, I'm sure you'll be right. They'll have you doing plenty, mate. But yeah, thanks again for joining us in this one in the crazy schedule before the Motocross Nation. We're all looking forward to it now. And yeah, massive shout out to the fans for listening and supporting the website and these podcasts. And a huge thank you to Fly Racing and Firepower. Obviously, go check out all their excellent offerings online. Obviously, go to their websites, check out your dealers, and yeah, follow them on social media too. Thanks again for joining us, JT. Been another cracking episode as we preview the Motocross Nation. So all the best and enjoy the weekend, and we'll probably catch up again for a debrief next week.
Sounds good, mate. Talk to you then.
No worries, mate. Have a good one.